Alrighty, so I want to take you through about how I got to 4% body fat myself. People often see the photos and then they go, what the heck? How the hell did you achieve that? What did you do to get there? And that's what I'm here to do today, to detail everything I did, what I learned from it, what you can learn from it, the pros and cons of doing it, and so forth. Now, if you don't want to watch the video, then there's a download for this. Once I put the video up later, I'll put a link so you can just download it and read everything that I did. So, a bit of background about why I got down so low was I entered a bodybuilding show, a fitness model show. Well, men's physique 1 week, novice bodybuilder another week. So that was my motivation. You need some sort of motivation like that to get into such a low state. But personally, I didn't use a coach. I'm not a very good bodybuilder. I'm very small. I went on at stage 69 kg. But I wanted to push myself. I wanted to see what could I do if I pushed my body. I always loved the ideas of pushing my body. So this is why I entered those shows, to see what would happen, learn from the experience, and it ticked all of those boxes. So what did I do? Well, just before we really get in there, I started out in a very good position. So a lot of people look at your photos and go, oh my God, you've got no body fat. How do I get lean? Tell me that secret. Well, the first secret is, and it's not my secret, is that I was already in pretty good shape when I started. So I started nice and early, 6 months before the show. So it wasn't like, oh, I'll enter a show next month. In March, I decided to go into it on the end of August. And within that, I only did 2 months of dieting. So basically, I'm starting that show 2 months out from being in shape to compete. Most people are obviously a long way away from that. And I don't think people really give the respect to some of these pictures you see of people who are super lean, realizing how long it took them to get into that ballpark shape, or have got lots of muscle, or how many years it took them to get in that shape. So I think that's definitely something to notice in. So don't go thinking, if you see somebody in a spectacular photo, thinking, oh, what's their magic plan? The reality of that plan is probably they started a year and a half ago, and so forth. So I was in good shape early on to ready to go for it. So I was in a stage where I could hit it. I used a flexible dieting approach. So what's flexible dieting? Well, there's two types of dieting. Most people use linear dieting. So that means a big period of dieting to get in shape. So you're going on holiday July the 1st, 12 weeks before it, you're like, right, I'm starting my plan. Or 4 weeks before it, I'm starting my plan. That's a linear approach to dieting. I took another approach, flexible. So basically I'm going to diet for 2 weeks, take 3 weeks off. Diet for 1 week, take 3 weeks off. Diet for another week, take 3 weeks off. Take 2 weeks on, and so forth. It's a longer approach, which comes back to what I said about having to start early. But it's got a lot, there's pros and cons to both. When it comes to long-term maintenance, flexible dieting is way ahead in sustainability than the linear approach. Because once you hit your achievement, I've gone on holiday, at the end of the linear thing, you rebound, and often people are putting that weight back on. So that was the approach that I used, flexible dieting. The basic methodology of what did I do to actually get things going? Well, I manipulated two things: how much food I was eating and how much movement I was doing. Gym, I was always constant in the gym. That stayed relatively constant throughout, but those two things were manipulated. So my basic movement of steps started off on 28,000 steps a day. My lifestyle was already around 25,000, and it finished up around 40. My food started off around 2,100 on the calories, and then we edged it back down. So that was a general approach. So as I got closer to competition, I increased my movement, decrease my steps. Increase my movement, decrease my food subtly, and I'll run you through some of the numbers in just a minute. So let's talk about food. What was I doing? Well, I was eating very regularly 4 times a day. Normally 8 a.m., midday, 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. So for me, that worked better. I liked that regular approach. There was no intermittent fasting. It was very structured, and you begin to really set your tone around it. Remember, none of these are right or wrong. It's just what I did to get in shape that year. So 4 meals a day I was doing it. And I went back to what a lot of people do for bodybuilding show. It becomes very boring diet. So literally, I'm eating tuna, mashed potato, bit of maybe sea salt for taste, tomato ketchup for taste, and that was like my base meal, which I'm probably eating 2 to 3 times a day. To go with that, I'd have a yogurt and protein shake as another meal. That's like my second type of meal. And then the third type of one was if I was on the edge, because obviously as you get closer to competition, as you're much leaner, you're doing huge movement, not eating much food, you do crack. And I'm never one of these, as I said, I use flexible dieting approach, not just in the weeks I use, but also in day-to-day stuff. So if I was on the verge of cracking, I used to get like these kids' chocolate bars, 120 calories, or a packet of salt and vinegar crisp, 170 calories. Maybe have 1 or 2 of those with a protein shake, and that would count for my meal. And I was pretty religious and structured to it, and did that 6 days a week, every single week. So 6 days a week, and then on the off day, day 7, I'd literally come out and just nail roughly 2.5 to 3 times the amount of my on day. So I was looking 5,000 to 6,000 calories on that off day, and it didn't matter what it was. It was just about getting in. If you ever tried to eat 5,000 to 6,000 calories in a day, especially after conditioning yourself to eat so little, it's quite hard work. So I do whatever. Also linking into the social side of things, be that eating out at restaurants, be that eating lots of, I used to use high calorie yogurts, used to go to like Pizza Hut, Chinese buffets. The off day was literally as much up here as it was nutritional. And it was about repeating that process. 6 days on, 1 day off, then coming again the next day. So the key things about some of the food stuff that, like I say, boring meals. So I'm just doing the 3 different types of meals, literally for the whole 2 months that I'm doing it. But when you're about to go on stage, you see it's very good motivational wise. You're prepared to do stuff most other people aren't prepared to do, which is, part and parcel of the game of committing to a sport like that. But the key things for my meal was it was very simple. I didn't want to think about food at all. So I would use microwave. I would take my tuna, take my mashed potato and put it in a microwave and just go from there. And people are like, oh my God, that's so unhealthy. And I'm like, well, probably getting down to 4% body fat's unhealthy. The question was, I didn't want to think about food. I wanted to stick it in there, put it in my mouth and get back on with my daily life and business. And that just worked much better for me. Now I know other people who love to prepare meals, make them fancy. Not me. I just wanted to have head down, grind. All the taste stuff I would leave for that off day and then go after it then rather than that. But saying that, those meals did taste nice to me. Like saying, any time you're eating, especially when you get really low, you've got to enjoy the taste of the meals. Now on a 0 to 10 scale, you rate it. I would rate them at like 7 to 8, something like that for taste. So even though tuna and potato might be boring as you like, if you're thinking about it, but to me there was enough taste in it. The yogurt and protein shake that I used, I enjoyed the yogurt. So I got my taste up to a minimum level to be able to get me through that day. And as I said earlier on, I did have those treats if I was going to mess things up, and I had a little chocolate bar. It didn't bother me. I just factored that into my goal for the day and moved on. I was I think people get a bit too much, stressed about, oh my God, I made an error. Oh no, not for me. It was like, I've got my goal, and I always had the bigger frame, because let's not lie, and I talked about being 6 days on, 1 day off for 2 months, but obviously broken up those weeks in 2 months. There was obviously days where, things get messed up and I had to make up for it the next day, but never going to beat myself up about these things. It's just about thinking, all right, you're doing your best. Let's just move on. And had each week I lost body fat. That's all I cared about. And if I had, I celebrated. I didn't beat myself up for anything. And this is very different to what most people do. So an interesting thing, like I say, when it comes to the macronutrients of this diet. So roughly what we're talking about, I was roughly on about 35% protein, 47% carbohydrates, and about 17% fat. If that adds up to 100, roughly does. So again, you might see that's quite different. You're like, oh my Lord, you have 47% carbohydrates. I thought you had to have low carb to lose body fat. Again, if you look at bodybuilding, it's so individual. Lots of people do it quite high carbs. Yes, some people do it very low carbs. I was doing it on like 240, how many grams a day? 240, 250 grams a day of carbs. So that was like 1,000 calories of carbs a day. And I got myself down to that lean level. So it's a bit of a fallacy. I think the key thing is on all these people is the ability to stick to it. You can't stick to it for the period of time. As I said, I did 2 months worth of dieting. If you can't stick to it for that long, it's never going to work for you. So that was my thing. 35% protein, that's roughly 190 grams a day. 240 grams a day of carbs. That was my average throughout that process. Obviously, it's slightly less as I got a little bit less calories towards the end, as in total quantities, but the ratio had always stayed the same. If you're a kind of person who uses grams per kilogram, then that's about 2.6 grams per kilogram of protein and about where's my maths? About 4 per carbs. Now, again, that I didn't find that difficult. I think this is a good thing to take about this. I got to that body fat level. You can see in the photos, go through my profile photos or follow the link below. I could have carried on dieting. Yes, there's the thing when you finish the show, but I was getting to the show and people were struggling to get there. They had a lot more body fat than myself. I was like, I enjoyed that process in a very, perverted way perhaps of pushing yourself. So that was the ratio that I used. So what am I saying here? Yeah, roughly. Started off at 2,100 calories. That was my first week of dieting. Come week 8 or week 7, I added down to like 1,700 calories. So I slightly edged it down. So the first 3 weeks was like 2,100. And then I went down to 2,000 on the head, a couple of weeks. Then I went down to 1,700 as we begin to just bring it down just a little bit. And the other side of that coin, the movement, I stepped that up. Now, I'm an active person, so my average steps, without even trying back then, was about 22,000 with clients, walking the dog and so forth. So initially I stepped it up to 28,000 steps, which isn't a huge increase for me. What's that, 20%? So let's put it in your numbers. If you're on, I don't know, 10,000 steps a day, then I'm asking you to do 12,000 instead of 10,000. That's not a huge ask. And then I keep putting them up as the weeks went on. So in the end, I finished up on around 38,000 steps a day. So as a percentage, again, it's not huge. It's 90%. So I've almost doubled my steps. But let's take a normal person, what they're doing. Normal people are doing like 6,000, 8,000 steps a day. So to ask you to take it up to 15,000, yeah, it's hard, but it's not like the biggest ask you've ever done in the history of the world. So how do I, obviously when I'm doing 38,000 steps a day, that's crazy numbers. So how was I doing that? Well, I would go at 5 a.m. every morning. I either walk the dog at 5 a.m. or if I had a client at 6:30, I would walk to the park so I could then get my hour and a half in. Because I always like to get my steps done very quick, because there's nothing more demoralizing in a couple of days when I hadn't done any movement by midday and I was like, I've got to do 30,000 steps before night time. It's quite a hard ask, that was, especially when, you know, you're a bit weaker on the energy side of things. So that's what I do. Move early and move late. It's easier for me to get this movement up there, if you imagine, because I'm working with people mostly outside. So I can say, hey, come on, let's just go for a run, you know, rather than watching them do a workout. I could work those sort of things in. I just walk between bus stops. I did this over the summer too. So it was quite, you know, a nice time to be doing those sort of walks. Towards the end, I started doing it inside for some reason. I just wanted, something I find it easy just to be in the gym and just walk on a treadmill for 2 hours listening to a lecture. So that's how I got the sort of movement. I think the key thing to take away was I had to start early. If I didn't start early, then it really struggled. Now, I did hardly any fitness work apart from that. So that is literally just walking on a treadmill, walking dog speed, walking whatever. I did the odd slow-paced run with a client, only if they're a slow runner. Had the odd game of five-a-side football, the odd bit of touch rugby, but most of that is just pure old-fashioned walking. Not out of breath, no fast walking, literally just slow-paced walking. Like most mornings along the Thames to Tower Bridge and back to Vauxhall, that was good. Or, as I said, towards the end, I went more on the treadmill. I think it's because what happened, it got warm and the dog came so slow because he's awful in the heat walking, he was too slow. So I used to just go on the treadmill instead, as far as that went. Gym-wise, I went every day to the gym. Some workouts were horrendous, some were quite good. I just did a token workout at least, and that's what I was working. So that was the movement side of things. One workout a day in the gym. Steps, I just kept edging up as I went. And then obviously the other side of that was the food. So that sums up like the biomechanics or biochemistry behind what the heck was going on. But it's never really about what was I doing, the A, B, and C's. Yes, that's helpful. But what it's ultimately about is how the heck did he stick to it through the harder time? What was the motivation? And I think that's the key thing. So there were some real fundamental elements that kept me motivated going through that process. The goal itself had four great elements. One, it puts you with fear. You know, like when somebody signs up for a marathon, they're like, oh, help me, Ben, I got to run this distance, whatever, can't finish it. It's the same thing. I'm like, well, I'm going to be standing in front of 1,000 people in the theatre, pretty much naked in 2 months' time, 6 months' time. That's good. It's not just a goal. Yes, it's an inspirational goal, so it excited me at the thought, but it also had some fear within there. And I think you'll find a lot of the stuff you really do drives that fear. So yeah, I'm like, shoot, I am not turning up there under any circumstance, not in the leanest, best shape I've ever been close to being. So that drove me along. Now, as far as the competition goes, remember, I was on my own. I had no coach, didn't know what the hell I was doing. You know, it probably wasn't the best techniques. You know, let's not lie, I was getting nowhere near the placings, you know, because I didn't know what I was doing. But my goal was to come in as lean as I physically could without killing myself. And I pretty much achieved that to that sort of goal. So that's an important thing. So I had the excitement of the show, but I had the fear to drive me. And like I said, that drive is very important. And then the final thing, you know, a part of that basic motivation is I knew it was a big achievement. So if you're the kind of person who likes to achieve things in life, that goal excited me. You know, and when I'm focused into a goal like that, I'll do whatever it takes pretty much to get to it. So this was the underlying thing. Because you haven't got that real deep drive, what's going to keep you going through some of the darker, harder times? It's got to be something quite important. And it can't just be, I want to feel good. No, that's just not enough. When there's fear, oh my God, I've told everybody I'm doing this show. Everybody knows I'm doing this show, so I've got to do it. There's a fear of looking bad. So that was probably the main driver through the tougher times. Along those lines, my mentality was always just one meal at a time. I felt nothing was more demoralizing than thinking, oh, it's Wednesday, I can't wait to my off day on Sunday. That's a long time, you know. It's a bit like, you know, when people, smokers, and they got smoking kills on a pack. Well, that's 50 years away, 40 years away. It's not present enough to cause trouble. So I had just one commitment to myself that I could quit at any time. All I'd have to do was eat all my day's food first, and then I would allow myself to quit. So that meant I was just focusing on my meal now. So as I said earlier on, I ate 4 times a day regularly, 8, 12, 4, 8 again. And some days I was really hungry, and I thought, all right, I'm quitting this. Forget this. This is rubbish. I don't want to do it anyway. But what I do is stick to that one goal or commitment to myself to eat all my meals. So I would go literally 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. eat that first meal, 9:30 eat that second meal, 11:30 eat that third meal, 3 o'clock eat that fourth meal, and I'm ready to quit. And funnily enough, I think I probably did this like 6 times. 5 out of the 6 times, I was like, I'm all right. I'll just go through to tomorrow now. And literally, what I wasn't wanting to quit, it felt like I wanted to quit, but what I actually wanted to do was just eat. And when I'd eaten all my food for the day, I refound my willpower, motivation, and then carried on. That other time I did quit a day early and just moved my off day around. But that was always my head. I wasn't thinking 6 weeks ahead. I was just thinking, crikey, just get through to the next meal, get to bed, do it again. And then when I got to Sundays, I talked about already, I went out and ate as much food in the world as I could, and then we repeated that pattern again. And looking into this isn't in a goldfish bowl. You know, I've got 2 things that are helping me out here. One, I had people around me in support. I had a training partner who I'd speak to, train with most days. I didn't have a coach, as I said, but you need someone to talk to, you know, just encourage you, say, well done this, just to talk about the sort of program. Then obviously the average person, if you're going for this sort of show, isn't going to understand you. So you need someone who's, understands the game. But that helps a load. I wouldn't underestimate the importance of having friends around to speak about this goal too. Then the other side was progress. I'm not literally doing a 2-month diet, even with the breaks that we had in it, and then thinking I'll check my results in a month. It's like, no, I'm checking in every day. I'm looking in that mirror. And the good thing is when you get really lean, so when you start jumping from 6% to 5.5%, you can see changes like almost every day or two. It's literally that crazy. You start seeing veins appear on your arms. You start seeing bones appear. You see your 6-pack muscles come better. You know, it is quite obvious the changes. So that would spur you sort of on by keep seeing yourself, keep checking in for results in that sort of respect. So the other element to that, well, the final element to that is there was no pissing around on the off day. I see this a lot with my clients. Oh, I'll have an off day. I'll have 1 extra croissant. And I'm like, that's not an off day. As I said, I was talking about going from 2,000 calories a day, which was down to 1,700 in the end, and my off days nailing 5,000 to 6,000. And everyone thinks that's fun, but actually it's quite hard work. A little bit like the steps. You've got to get in early to get that much food. You can't turn up at lunchtime having only eaten 200 calories and expect to do 6,000 calories in that afternoon. So the off day, I was truly off. There was no messing around. I wasn't trying to be good. I wasn't trying to worry about where I was eating, what my macros were. I was like, I'm not counting my food. So I wouldn't weigh my food for that day, but I can roughly work it out. You can work out what you eat in Pizza Hut, and then I'd go purely at it, and they'd be very relaxed, very enjoyable from that. And then the next day I'd be good to go. So I think a lot of people, by never being truly off, catch themselves out. But for me, that was a big part of the mental motivation. And a lot of the times, the only way I could get through to a day was like, well, those biscuits I want to kill right now, I'm going to eat a whole pack of those shortbreads Sunday morning and then take it from there. So usually I do Monday to Saturday on, Sunday off. Occasionally I do Saturday off, but that was normally my sort of pattern. So that was the key thing. So yeah, we talked about the food, talked about the exercise, but that's everything. You got to look behind it. That's the key thing, is how can I stick to it? And the goal is powerful. If you haven't got that powerful goal, don't be surprised about not sticking to it. If you haven't committed to other people knowing about it, again, if you're doing it in secret, that keeps you going, because then you get that fear. You got to get fear. And then all the other stuff, the support, the off days, that very moment-to-moment living was definitely a lot more beneficial in being able to stick to this plan. Because as I say, there's no messing around. There were times, I think hunger, because I trained myself a lot to be okay with hunger from doing fast Ramadans and different diets, it never really affected me. But energy levels, man, that would be hard. I remember sometimes not being able to walk up the stairs and literally having to wait a couple of minutes before I could find some oomph to get up the stairs. And energy comes and goes. I think I learned that a lot from that process. I've never done anything that's been quite as taxing energy-wise as that ever since, you know. So there were times when literally, I remember I was only walking. I wasn't doing HIIT, I wasn't doing jogging. I was just walking, but obviously big distances. And then literally you'd run out. But energy would come back. 10 minutes later, you'd feel fine. And then maybe 2 hours later, I was told you had the odd games of five-a-side football in a few weeks in a league. And then I was running around like a total lunatic. So I definitely learned that energy comes up and down. But like I say, at some point, you're just like, man, this is tough work. But it wasn't really the hunger for me. Because I wasn't low carb, I think that was a big part to play. And because my calories are quite moderated and balanced, I think that helped a lot. But it was energy. You definitely become flat. And temperature too. You know, it was in the summer. It was not the worst British summer ever. But you definitely feel colder. And obviously, I really backed it up last year when I did the 5-day... no calorie water only fast. You know, that was what really got me, was the cold. Man, I felt cold, and it was nice normal temperatures. And you can read about that more on my website, or I'll do a video about that another day perhaps. So some people, when we talk about this, talk about whether this is a healthy thing to do. Pretty much not, I would say the answer is. But then most sports aren't healthy. If you think bodybuilding, fitness model shows, whatever you want to call it, you know, how many sports are really healthy? Is, you know, playing rugby, getting smashed in the face, healthy? Is boxing healthy? Is cycling, you know, huge distances, running? There's pros and cons to most different sports. So in that respect, this is definitely not healthy though, because you're starving yourself effectively for 2 months to get yourself down to low sort of body fat levels. Now, a lot of that stuff is temporary, you know, so like your metabolic rate drops loads. So that's why I was bringing my calories down. I'm stepping my movement up, because as you go further into losing body fat, more into famine mode, your body shuts down in metabolic rate. And they've done plenty of studies on this. You need maybe 25 to 33% less calories at the end of a dieting phase than at the beginning. So if you need 2,000 calories a day and you do this sort of cut to get really low, at the end of it, you might only need 1,500 calories. So everyone's like, oh, I've broken metabolism. But I can tell you, it came back pretty quickly. Not quick, but as you come back to eating, the reverse happens and you rebuild your metabolism and so forth. So in general, I don't think it's great for health, but I'm still alive. I didn't have any undue symptoms. Now, where it can definitely be different is it promotes binge eating. You know, if you're using that on-off day approach, which, you know, I was using, it definitely promotes binge eating, because obviously on the Sunday, you're purposely meant to go out and nail 5,000-6,000 calories. That can then get to that cycle. Then you come back to make yourself hungry, you know, starve yourself. You're not starving yourself, but, you know, you're losing body fat again. So it can definitely promote negativities around binge eating cycle, and also promotion of bad foods. You know, as you get hungrier, as you get leaner in body fat, your brain is trained to look and want to eat foods more. You can become quite obsessive around foods, obsessive about controlling your foods when you're being good, and obviously going a bit crazy. It's like, you know, the basics of like bulimia, binge eating cycle, you know, then going crazy on the junk foods and so forth. So it's definitely not for everyone. I think you've got to be very careful about your mental framework before you go into this sort of pursuit. And I think body image comes along that too. There's no quicker way to feel bad about your body than to stand next to 10 other blokes who are in miles better shape than yourself, and you're like, oh, that guy's got more muscle, that guy's bigger than me. Then the judges look at you and go, you look rubbish, get to the back, you're not called out for it. It's amazing to mess with your head as far as those sort of things go. So I think it's definitely, you know, will affect you up here. And then you get the other cycle. Once you've been 2% body fat or 4% body, whatever it was, we don't quite know what number I was we talked about. But once you're in 4% body fat, when you're back to something normal at 8, 9, 10% body fat, guess what? You feel fatter because you are fatter. So this sort of process definitely has some negative effects on your head. And it takes a special person, but certainly special considerations to know that you can handle that in a right way. And obviously, bikini competitions, male bodybuilding, fitness model competitions, they're rife with leftovers of eating disorders and so forth. There is a debate about whether people with eating disorders are more attracted to bodybuilding type competitions, or vice versa, the competition promote it more. There's definitely a correlation of some sort going on. But obviously the fundamental desire or goal of a bodybuilding, fitness modeling, bikini competing, getting to super low body fat levels, it's very helpful if you've got some sort of obsessive compulsion around food. It's just, it can go totally wrong, but it can also totally serve you in the right direction. So definitely a consideration for the health throwbacks of this thing. It's how you react to it. As I talked on the very beginning, I use a flexible dieting approach, which I'm a much bigger fan of. So just to recap, you went at the beginning, you know, 2 weeks dieting, 1 week off, 2 weeks dieting, 2 weeks off, 1 week dieting, 3 weeks off, repeating that phase, which takes a bit longer. But like I said, they've shown in studies categorically that it's much more effective. People who do the 12-week, 16-week chunk, what was one study I read recently, they had 90% less fat, did the people who did the flexible dieting approach than the linear one. Mainly because the linear people just all went back to where they started. So I think if somebody's doing their first show, that's a much more sensible and safe method to go through. I think if you're a seasoned pro or you've done these bodybuilding fitness type shows, used to getting to these low levels, you can do what you want. And obviously, if you look at the field, all the good people have found a method that works for them. As I talked about earlier on with my food, the carbs weren't that low. The carbs were quite high, 1,000 calories a day of carbs. That's a lot. It worked fine for me to get super lean. Other people go much, much lower than that. The point is, it's a very individual sport. And if you know what you're doing about your body, you can get there in that sort of sense. So that's a quick sum up. Well, that's quite a nice sum up of what happened and how it goes. I'll talk more about, I want to get in some people who've competed and stuff, some of the pros and cons of competing. I've touched on a little bit today, body image, binge eating image, the disappointments, the hardship. I had very few health, no health issues from doing it, but I know plenty of people who have. You can see their Instagram profile, the people in hospital from this and that. So I'd love to another day have a debate about some of the pros and cons of taking your body to that extreme. But today's hopefully giving you an overview of what it's all about. Remember, you can get this all written down. You want to see the meals stuff and the numbers between the different weeks of dieting, then I'll put up a link once this is finished and so forth, and you can go and download that sort of thing. As ever, any questions? I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover. I'll catch you soon. All right, cheers.